Hi there. This is a bit of a unique video for me. I don't really do these, but I had some thoughts and I wanted to get them out there real quick about the Street Fighter 6 beta because I feel like there's gonna be a lot of weird, interesting, wild opinions going out. I figured I'd throw out my 2 cents. Since I think when it comes to fighting games, my opinions can be pretty sensible. Right? So I wanna chuck some stuff out there. Now, obviously, first of all, no shit, the game is great. Alright, I don't think anyone's saying it isn't, right? The game's really good right now. All characters are really fun. Really, it's a oddly open-ended system with a few restrictions that we'll get into, right? And as far as emulating the Street Fighter style, but expanding on it in its own unique ways, it does a really good job. I think the balance of the super meter with the drive meter is on point. I basically don't have an issue with any of the core mechanics so far. I think some character movesets, and especially character power, can be discussed. Not specifically because I think the game's particularly imbalanced, but I think has more to do with the game's philosophy of character power has led to some interesting kerfuffles with movesets, but ignoring all that, game's fantastic, it looks fantastic, it plays fantastic, online's good. Everything, it's already very clear that Street Fighter 6 is going to be like a big hit, right? They've done everything properly, right? Everything that you need to make a good, successful fighting game, right? I wouldn't be surprised if this outsells Mortal Kombat, really, or something like that. It seems genuinely like they've given their everything to this game, and it's a proper AAA fighting game, and it's going to play that way, right? Which is great. That's not what I'm really here to talk about, because that's the obvious bit. We got that out of the way. I'm mainly here to talk about character power and how I think the game's overall character power meta is going to develop and how that's going to influence the meta, because I feel like no one's talking about this. I fought a lot of people below my skill level, at my skill level, and definitely above my skill level. Right, and it was mainly fighting people above my skill level, is why I think you shouldn't fuck with the mechanics of this game at all. I still see lots of people complaining about drive impact. I'm really surprised that people are still complaining about drive impact. Once again, people are going to complain about anything that's vaguely annoying and hard to deal with at launch, right? So you can ignore it, and I assume the developers are smarter than that. But I just want to reiterate, since that is the main problem mechanic. Oh my god, that move is like absurdly balanced. It's actually unfair how balanced it is, right? Just the amount of ways you can deal with it, the way it has its own advantages and situations. Like, I was fighting Goldie, and he was absolutely abusing me with that shit. Whenever I was in the corner, I had to deal with it. And many people have said this as well. Early on, Street Fighter 6 has a really big mental stack, because there's tons of tools that you can use, all of them universal for the most part, along with a lot of character-specific stuff like Jamie's drink, Ryu's Denjin, stuff like that, Perfect Charge with Luke, shit like that. Lots of shit. So just even then, like a 20-frame armored mid, right, with Wall Crush is scary, but it is insanely balanced. I think we're really going to realize how shit it is when people start using parry more, because parry literally completely nullifies it. Parry it, there's no wall crush effect or anything. Obviously, I think you're even on block, right? But like, just press medium, medium punch, medium kick, and you're done. You're out of there, right? So in that regard, I think I'm still surprised we're up to beta 2 and people are still complaining about it and saying it should cost more drive meter, because if it did, it'd be worthless. It'd be a worthless maneuver. You risk it all on a reactable armored mid that can be tossed, parried, you can mash through it, you could super it, if so many situations where you can beat it, right? It has to cost 1 drive gauge. If it doesn't, it's worthless. Actually shit. And it's only good at the wall outside of calling out people pressing buttons, right? So I think in that regard, it's a completely fine move. I'm not the greatest fan of how this game is clearly gonna, and as it's in its current gameplay form, it's very much gonna develop into save drive gauge, so you can do drive rush meaty, right, off a lot of knockdowns. The only way to get really strong meaties seemingly is to burn the gauge on drive rush, do meaty, set up for your meaty gauge, frame traps and throw traps and that sort of thing, right? which is a tad predictable, but at the end of the day, Drive Rush is meant to be a versatile system within utilizing your character's normals, so it's not really that big a deal. A lot of people are bringing up that Drive Reversal feels a bit useless. I don't think it's meant to be ultra prevalent. I hope they wouldn't try to make it ultra prevalent, because I think personally one of the least interesting things about Street Fighter V was how V meter was affected with V reversal. Right, V reversal, like, it happened all the time. It was a super important prevalent tool, and it's not a cool tool. It's not interesting. It's just like a, it's just a blowback, right? It's just a dead angle, that sort of thing, right? It's just in that regard, it was never interesting. Most interesting thing about it was that you can call it out with throw, with a hard call out. That was it, right? But like, I think them making it so that it counters very specific tools, right? Like Drive Impact, as mentioned earlier. Like certain Drive Rush setups, involved throws, that sort of thing. Spend gauge, get out of jail free card, go back to neutral. I think that's how it should remain. I don't think it needs any changes in that regard, right? But the main thing that the thing is, this game is so tightly designed that the thing I'm going to complain about is not even really that big a deal. But I think in the terms of the game's longevity, they're going to really need to consider how they handle it. And I think that's character power. I think the character power is not too high, but there's certain examples of characters where characters get very generous juggles in this game. Very generous, because of how the Drive Rush system works, right? So crouching medium kick is hilariously threatening in this game. And every character has a good one, pretty much. Every character has a decent one. There's no bad one in this game, by design, right? And they're all immensely powerful, because along with the standard Street Fighter crouching medium confirm to save special sort of thing, you can Drive Rush it, right? You can cancel the Drive Rush, get a combo, right? Set up. And that's godlike, right? Off those kinds of normals. Never mind any other kinds of normals, right? There's a reason everyone's still complaining about Guile, right? And says that Guile is, to most bar none, the best character in the beta. He's got massive buttons. Drive Rush just helps him in every way. He's got massive specials too, right? Really good juggle potential, really good damage. It's just so much like shit that he can throw on you, on top of the mental stack, and you're dealing with a Zona Shoto hybrid, which is what he's always been, right? So in that regard, and I just think overall, I think juggle states for certain characters, when I say this, I'm mainly thinking of Guile, Ryu, and Kimberly. I think they all have really strong, really effective tools, and we were realizing how effective they were just within 3 days, right? And they can get a little brain dead at times. And like, I think everyone can agree with me, Street Fighter is at its least interesting when characters are just playing with their hands, just throwing shit out in the nooch, right? Playing footsies with their fucking toes, not even think about it that hard. And there's a few examples, right? I think Ryu's funny in this game. They made him really strong. They gave him a bunch of special moves. They've given him like really strong versions of every special move. Right, his fireballs are super good, and you can buff them, and you can EX the buffed ones, so you can just overpower. You can, as long as you've set up, you can out-prioritize fireball walls, because fireballs work on a priority system instead of a hit system, right? Which is like crazy, right? That's how they've balanced Denjin. An EX fireball out-prioritizes a Denjin fireball, but not an EX Denjin, obviously, right? That's how they like sort of balance it within the fireball wars. But then like, Blade Kick is godlike, and Tatsu is good as well, and EX Tatsu has like a hilariously generous launch that leads into Drive Rush, and it's like you get enough time to do that, right? He gets all these just really strong, really good confirms, and like he gets them off everything, dude. DP level 3 works, Donkey Kick level 3 works, Fireball level 3 works, like fucking like fist fight, like what do you call it? Plus frame Fireball, whatever the fuck, Hashimon, whatever the new Fireball move is, works in level 3, works in level 2. Right? So many moves just work into his supers. He's so versatile, right? And I'm sitting there playing Luke, and Luke's fucking a versatile cunt too, but I'm sitting there like, bro, I wish I had the fucking super conversions this guy had. My God, like, I wish my EX DP went into level 2, but it sure don't, but Ryu's, man, he don't give a fuck. Right, Kimberly especially. Kimberly kind of needs to be designed that way, to be fair. She's clearly designed to be 50-50 based, right, with proper set play. And that's not new to Street Fighter. Menat existed, right? That's nothing new. But it does feed into this idea that they clearly want the character power to be pretty high in this game for like a footsies fundy based game, right? With lots of freedom for like unique execution, right, and expression. But I think because they've leaned into this so hard, they've shot themselves in the foot a bit as far as actual like character expression goes. Now listen, I'm a bit of a cynic when it comes to the idea of expression in fighting games. I think people people really like to lean on it as a way to really push up their game. It's like, our game has player expression, and it's like, well, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about half the time, because you watch any player expression is normally more, as far as I'm aware, of a showcase of actual of character power within the game. If there is high character power in the game, normally there will be more player expression, because almost all the casts are gods, like demigods, right? So you can get away with lots of shenanigans, and you can specialize in your own particular kind of shenanigan, right? The Marvel 3 is like this, Guilty Gear Plus R is like this, right? This is why so many old gearheads hate Strife, because Strife lowered the character power, which lowered the ability to express yourself, right? A lot of people, and hell, when it comes to player expression, I agree with the Lord Knight take, where I think player expression is more rooted in what colors you pick, soundtrack, stage pick, right? How do you taunt? Shit like that's like true player expression, truly expressing what a player prefers. Do you let the intros rock, right? For a hype set, for a hype matchup that you're doing, right? I don't think player expression is as rooted in character design and moveset design as a lot of people think it is, right? But that's my personal opinion. You're welcome to disagree with that, right? But my point is, because they've pushed for this high character power in the interest, I think, of player expression and player creativity, it's meant that a lot of characters are actually really restricted to certain tools. And the main reason I bring this up is because Marty brought this up to me. Marty, he likes the game. But he brought up that he already thinks the game's a little boring, because he's a very experienced old vet. And listen, all old vets hate new shit. He admits this, right? And that's fine. But he brought up an interesting point to me, which is I think Ryu's boring in this game. And I think to myself, being the young Zoomer fighting game player that I am, how he has everything, right? He has all this new stuff to play with, and he basically said in his own Marty way, that's what I mean, right? And that's a bit of a predictable path to go down, right? By giving everyone everything, everyone's super, therefore no one is super, right? But I think at the end of the day, that expression, cliched as it is, still matters, right? And it's important for Street Fighter 6 to consider it, right? Overall in the great zeitgeist of fighting game design, because I felt this myself. Every time I fought Ryu, I was like, this motherfucker could hit me with one crouching medium kick, and there's a million fucking things he could do off of that crouching medium kick, alright? It's pick his poison with that, or pick my poison, I guess, with that sort of shit, alright? And he brought this up. He felt Ryu was restricted in design because of this, because it's he's got so many tools to reset from distance and get plus frames that so many Ryus are just going to turn into mash, crouch, jab, confirm, into shenanigans, into high damage, into drive rush Oki, and then loop it. And he brought up he didn't think that was very expressive. Marty loves Billy from King of Fighters 15. Billy is trash, but he loves him, right? Everyone acknowledges Billy's not good, but he loves Billy, right? And part of the reason he loves Billy is because despite the fact that he's not strong, it grants him a unique identity amongst the cast. Not just because he's weak, but he has access to a lot of unique tools that a lot of the cast doesn't have. And because of that uniqueness, it's kind of why he's not great within the meta, because he doesn't necessarily follow the 15 meta. What Marty brought up is that he's worried because of how open-ended and strong the general mechanics in Street Fighter 6 are. Excuse me. It will lead to a lot of characters needing certain tools in order to be successful and to be played within the game's competitive atmosphere, and that's what you want at the end of the day. It's a fighting game, it's a competitive genre. Even ignoring tournaments, right? At the end of the day, when you are playing the game, you will compete against somebody to win. That is the point, right? So he brought up, there can't be a character with a bad jab in this game. There literally can't be, right? You're not allowed. You suck if you do, right? Because there's so many situations where you get locked down into situations where you need to mash out. And if they want to design a character where it's his thing is that his fast buttons aren't very good, but that character just automatically sucks, right? And that's a hypothetical, right? The game's we've only played it for nearly a week now, as far as total playtime goes, ignoring the cracked beta, of course. But I absolutely see his point. And I think it's something that I'd hope devs are considering when designing characters and the general mechanics of the game. I think we're in a super honeymoon phase of the game right now. It's not even out yet, but we're all in it, right? And it's going to happen even more when all the new characters, we can get all our hands on the other characters they've teased, right? And the characters that got leaked, and see how they play and what they do and how many fucking moves idgaf has or something, or how Akuma actually has like a triple DP and it's not even a super or some shit, right? And we're all going to be eyes glazed over, right? But he brings up a good point about the game's future, right? And at the end of the day, I think what we all want is for Street Fighter 6 to have as much longevity as it can have. Now, inevitably, to be fair, there will be a point where people are just going to be like, despite this honeymoon phase, people are going to be like, Street Fighter 6 is trash. I hate that game. That game is so dumb. Drive Rush Overhead Oki is so busted right now. Oh, it's so annoying. Yeah, it's inevitable. It's every high-level fighting game. And most of the people who play it don't even hear that shit, right? But I would like Street Fighter 6 to consider as much as it can what characters should have access to and what they should not, even if it comes at the expense of creativity a little bit, all right? I think it's a give and take sort of idea, right? And I think if we give everything to creativity, well, like, listen, I don't want every fighting game to be Guilty Gear, all right? There's a reason I don't play Plus R, all right? It was so willing to do that shit that it's a mess. You know, it's like, it's chaos, right? But, you know, once again, it comes down to preference. You never know. But the thing about Street Fighter that I love Street Fighter 4, right, is that it has always stuck to its guns when it comes to, we are the fighting game about having a shit jump and a good crouching medium kick, right? And obviously there's the Alpha series, so that's a bit of an exception, right? But even Street Fighter's experimented within that. But with chord numbered entries, that has been the case. Your jump is shit, you will get anti-aired for being a loon, play footsies, right? And it's like, great, you know, that's its niche. And Street Fighter 6 has managed to open up all these other mechanics while keeping that niche. So I just hope that it understands how to keep that niche and keep characters interesting without ballooning their movesets too much, right? I love having a million options too, but, you know, I wasn't exactly shedding a tear when they got rid of Soul's Riot Stand, you know, because that move is stupid, all right? And sometimes you can give Ryu too many specials. Right? I don't really think that, but I was looking at his juggle states and thinking, like, I wish, you know, Luke don't got these. Ken don't got these. Where's Ken's juggle states, bro? Off drive. My God. You know? But that's just my hot take, right? It's a thing to consider. I hope people will give me their own takes about this sort of thing. I've dragged it on a bit. This wasn't scripted. I just wanted to shoot my thoughts out there and get them on some sort of recording file and see if I can do something with it later. To cap off, game's great. No shit, game is great. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to the expanded roster as well. And I wish the game the best, sincerely. I'm not really a Street Fighter fan. I didn't like 4. I didn't like 5. I really didn't like 4. But I like 6. And 6 is kind of for me, it's a big in-between of both, where it's more restrained than 4 and not as silly, but it's more open than 5, so it hits a really nice sweet spot for me personally. I really like, and a lot of modern fighting games are doing this nowadays, where they're hitting this sort of weird in-between between developer control and player creativity, which I think is really nice, right? But I hope the game the best, and I hope my takes aren't stupid, and people can appreciate where I'm trying to come from with this, so, yeah.